Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good to see you in this statistic for economic class. This is our second meeting, so I hope you are in the good health and ready for discussion. As we have agreed, and I have already shown you on the previous week about our study plan during this semester. Today, we planned our topic is about the definition of hypothesis and the definition of hypothesis testing. This understanding is important for you, I thought, particularly when you were planned to conduct research. So I hope this very brief material will be useful for you. Okay, here is our learning outcome today. Uh, we expect after finish this session you could explain the definition of hypothesis and the hypothesis testing. And there are two materials that we want to discuss here. Number one, it is the difference between parameters and statistic. And then, of course, the definition of hypothesis and some steps in conducting the hypothesis testing. Last, there is some student evaluation for you. I will make the evaluation in form of quizzes. So let's go to the main discussion about the materials that what is the difference between parameters and statistic. We will discuss in the next slide. First of all, I want to little bit refresh your memory about you something you had learned in previous statistic class or in the introduction to statistic. It is the topic of the what we call is the central value tendency. This is how we measure the value of population. Here is the example. Suppose that last week you visit your friend graduation in Graha Unsud, and please assume that what we call by population in this example is uh, economic student who graduate in August 2020. After attend your friend's graduation, you hang out with some friends, and maybe one of your friend asks you about the graduation. Maybe the question is about how many years does the graduate student of economic faculty finish the study? The answer may be uh, quite straightforward. Then you might answer maybe 4.5 years. The question is how this number 4.5 years appears in your head. Where does this 4 and 5 or 4.5 years number come from? This is the problem that central value tendency uh, try to answer. Okay, how the number came from? How this 4.5 years came from? Uh, Maybe there are some possibilities. Number one, maybe you heard when you attend the graduation that the folk said that on the average the year of study in economics faculty is 4.5 years. So you know the mean or average years of length study in economic faculty. So by doing this, you know the value of population is reflected in the this value of mean or average. Or second, or maybe when you attend the your friend's graduation ceremony in Unsud Graha on Graha Unsud, you saw the students were sat in ordered chair, where the first row it is for students who very smart that finish their study less than 4.5 years maybe, and in the second to fifth rows are for students who finish their study in 4.5 years, and there are sixth and seventh rows for students who finish their study more than 4.5 years. You know the information that most of them are finish their study in 4 and 5 years. This is the mode. Or you could count from the order chair that reflecting the student length from the fastest to the slowest length of study, and maybe you choose the exact chair that divide the student, this graduation student, into two groups equally, and the exact chair that you choose, that is the number that reflecting the years of study of those population, in this case the graduate student of economics faculty. So these are three possibilities on how the number came up when somebody asks you how many years does the graduate student of economic faculty finish the study, and what is this about then? What we can learn from you from this example, we will see in our next slide. What can we learn from the previous example? So we know knew there is a single value that could represent the whole of population. The single value is called the central value tendency. It is a value that could represent all the data series. In our previous example, it the central value is the value that could represent all the our population, that is the economic student who graduate in August 2020. There are three numbers that could represent the whole of population. So by studying the central value tendency, actually we want to know what is the best value that represent our population data. From these three value, which one that best that represent the our population data? Maybe you could choose the mean or the average, maybe you could choose the median value, or maybe you could choose the mode. So the central value tendency is represent the value of the population. The most widely used value to represent the population is mean value or the average value. If we sum of all of the year of study of every student and divide it by the numbers of students, we get the average value of length of study of the student. This value then, the mean value, is represent our population characteristics. The value that represent the population characteristic, it is called a parameter. So keep it in your mind that the parameter is the characteristic of a population. However, we often more interested by selecting a sample instead of asking one by one of the student maybe uh, to answer how long they finish their study. It would be time consuming and it needs a lot of energy and resources to questioning the length of study one by one. For example, there are 700 graduate students of economics. So, therefore, sample is preferable when we measure the population. For example, we choose 50 students uh, for our sample, and then you ask the 50 student how long they finish their study in Faculty of Economics, and then you will get the sample value or the mean sample value of 50 students. Now, the mean sample value that you get by uh, asking the 50 student, it is called a statistic. Okay, so did you see the difference? When the value of population is measured by all of population data, then it is called parameter. But when the value of population is measured by sample data, it is called statistic. We are more interested in statistic than in parameter. Okay.